Welcome back. We're going to talk now about a problem that we have, I think, paid altogether too little attention to of late. It is a project of the Biden administration to get back into some kind of nuclear deal with the nation of Iran, despite a lot of terrible experience with previous deals with the Iranians, and despite the fact that in order to get into such a deal, the United States government has been behaving in a manner that I think can only invite the contempt of our adversaries, not just the Iranians, but also the Russians, who, in the middle of our difficulties with them over Ukraine, we are relying upon to assist us in negotiating this so called Iran Deal 2.0. A man who has been deeply knowledgeable about nuclear weapons programs and capabilities for decades, going back to his time as a Central Intelligence Agency analyst, and then as a member of the professional staff of the House Armed Services Committee, and then as a staff member of several commissions, including one on strategic forces and another on the threats to our electric grid, is Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, a great friend and colleague, very appreciated contributor to this program, also a member of our Committee on the Present Danger China. And he's written recently about this Iran deal as being a risk we cannot live with. And I'm anxious to get his thoughts on it. Dr. Pry, welcome back to Securing America, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Frank. And I would add that the Biden administration policy on seeking a new nuclear deal with Iran is also earning the contempt of our friends in the Middle East.
Indeed. Indeed. No, you're right. It's an equal opportunity contempt generator. Um, Peter, talk a little bit about the threat as you see it. If the Iranian uh, program is not actually stopped, how dangerous is it? And are we right to be concerned that whatever the administration is trying to conjure up now is unlikely to stop that nuclear program?
Well, I'm of a minority view, but it's a distinguished minority view that includes, former CIA Director Woolsey and Dr. Graham, who was the White House science advisor and ran NASA, Fritz Ehrmarth, who was Reagan's chairman of the National Intelligence Council, and uh, Ambassador Henry Cooper, several others who believe Iran already has the nuclear weapons and that they've
Hmm.
probably had them since 2003, and they've probably weaponized the Shahab 3 missile. And that unlike North Korea, which has acquired nuclear weapons for purposes of diplomacy and blackmail and has advertised its program every step of the way, the Iranians have deliberately concealed their program because they're more dangerous than North Korea. That
Hmm.
they have profound ideological, religious reasons for wanting the bomb that has to do with destroying the infidel powers, and that they plan to use it someday. And so that this has been a fool's paradise. This idea of pursuing an arms control agreement to basically disarm Iran of nuclear weapons because they've had them for a long time. And I think the scientific technological case is very hard to deny, but nonetheless, Washington has been in deep denial about this for a long time.
If that's so, and let's say for the purpose of discussion that it is, Peter, uh, two things. One is typically especially nations like Iran, have sought to establish their nuclear capabilities publicly, for example, North Korea, in the belief that it will protect them from efforts by countries like ours to seek the removal of the regime. So it's a little surprising, given that we have intermittently been about that, that they wouldn't take advantage of it. And secondly, I guess the question is, if the problem of a nuclear Iran is as serious as successive American governments have said, wouldn't we have seen, if they have this most dangerous of all weapons, them wielding it before now?
Not necessarily. To go to the first point, about Why would they not openly use their nuclear weapon, test it, or advertise its existence in order to protect their regime? They're not a normal nation state. The mullahs who run Iran is a theocracy, and they believe God is on their side, and we are in the end time, and that they are destined to win this struggle. The uh, uh, attitude is medieval. They have a 12th Imam conference every year in Tehran to look at the signs and portents, and these include, not just the alignment of stars and things like that, but what's happening in world affairs to decide, is this the moment? Is this the time that they should use? We have not. In fact, uh, we wrongly think of Iran as a normal nation state, even though it may be an evil nation state, but it is run and managed the way normal nation states are, that think in terms of geopolitical and strategic interests and the like. And that is a big mistake. We need to be looking at Iran from the perspective of their own ideological perspective. Unfortunately, during the Bush and Obama administrations, people who were deep specialists in the ideology of radical Shiite Islam were booted out of their jobs, because it was considered politically incorrect to look at radical Islam and how it moves it. So I think we've been blind to this
Yes.
threat, and and what we regard as common sense analysis, like, well, surely if they had the bomb, they would have used it to threaten us by now. You don't do that if you actually plan to use it on a surprise basis. I mean, one of the things that I'm deeply concerned about, and maybe I'm the only one in the West concerned about this right now, is Iran possibly using a nuclear weapon in the war in Ukraine to try to convince the United States that Russia has used tactical nuclear weapons to try to trigger some kind of an all-out nuclear war between the infidel powers, so they'll destroy each other. That's
Wow.
how the radical
Peter,
Islamists think, like in the Iranian Revolutionary
yeah,
War.
I think that point is well taken. Whether that scenario is reasonable remains to be discussed, I suppose. But I do want to just emphasize the 12th Imam is the guy they think is going to usher in the golden age of Islam, and their intent on bringing him back, which it seems requires them to help generate an apocalypse.
Yes.
Talk about all of this at greater length with Peter Pry on the other side of this very short break. Stand by.